Hello and welcome to the show. Now today we have a very serious subject because on the second part of the series where we are talking about abuse, we'll be talking to a professional who has experience in knowing how to help people to overcome that. And when you talk about abuse, you have the part of the person who's being abused and the abuser.
Yes, and what happens after the person is abused.
Right.
You know, it causes a lot of traumas, a lot of problems, a lot of marks.
Hopefully through this program, you will be able to know how to overcome those traumas, how to overcome abuse, and perhaps you need help how to live an abusive relationship, and we hope that you can find this help here tonight. We're going to hear now from the people in the streets of London to see what they have to say about abusive relationships.
Do you think that an abuser can change? You know, an abuser in a relationship, someone who domestic violence and all this kind of thing?
I don't really know. I don't think so necessarily unless they get help, but I'd probably lean towards no.
I don't think they can change. It's sort of in their instinct, I guess, sort of like their behaviour. I don't know. I don't think they can change.
People can always change, you know, like, yeah.
So you believe that they can change?
100%. You can't taint someone for the rest of their life for one thing they've done. I think you should give the chance, an opportunity for someone to change. If they do, then it's for the better, isn't it?
No.
Okay. Would you like to tell us why?
Well, my dad actually was an abuser to my mum, and when he left, he was abusive to another woman that he was with as well.
So the problem is deeper, would you say?
Yes, I would.
What would you tell this person who is watching us, who has maybe an anger problem and doesn't recognize he needs therapy? What would you tell this person who may need some help to change?
If they need help to change, the first step is for them to realise that they need to change. No one else can help them until they need to know. They know that they need to change.
Well, I think that it's quite difficult that a person that has this kind of habits, of behavior is able to change. Or I think it's an hard work to make somebody change so radically. I think that maybe sometimes this situation derives from a past of this person. That
So it's deeply rooted. You're saying like it's deep. The problem is quite deep.
Yeah, I think that a violent person has a problem that derives from his family or his past. So it's something a little bit difficult to change in someone.
Change.
No, never change.
So you don't think there's a chance?
That's in them. Once they've got it in them, that's it. They're abusers.
Now you can see that some people on the street have some very interesting and radical views about abuse. Now, although I have many opinions about this, we have here with us tonight Hans Meijer. Is that how you pronounce your surname?
Yes.
You told me not to worry about how to pronounce your surname.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what you do as a professional to help people who are in abuse, also the abuser.
Well, I'm a counsellor. So people come to me when, for whatever reason, they feel that they are not able to live their life to the full.
Right.
Something's getting in the way. And I do work with people that have been in abusive relationships. And that often leaves them with a severe trauma that can affect later in life how you function.
Right.
And
now, one of the most common things that people tell us when they're in abusive relationships is that although they know they need to get out of the relationship, they don't know how to do it. So they stay in that abusive relationship for a really long time. From your experience in helping people, what is the fear or what holds them back from moving forward?
Well, dependency is very often quoted. And for some, we're talking about, I mean, it happens to men, but mostly to women. For some women, it is being in a relationship where there's a financial dependency. You know, where do I go?
Or even children, isn't it?
And children, yeah. I mean, how am I going to look after my children? Also things like, but my child deserves to have a father. So to take the child away from the father is a difficulty as well.
But sorry to continue, but still on the child and the father, Would you say it's okay? I mean, you've been abused, so just for the sake of the child having a father, it's okay to remain in an abusive relationship? What do you think?
Well, the most important thing that I work on is that violent behavior is never okay.
Okay. Because children grow up feeling angry and, you know, to become angry people themselves and traumatized. So it's...
I mean, there's actually a name for it. It's called secondary victimization, where to see somebody being beaten has an effect on the person who is observing it. And so
it's never good, isn't it? It's not a good idea.
No, it is. It isn't. It's never good.
Now, you have the issue in abusive relationships of the person wanting to move on, but there's the issue with dependency and other things. Sometimes the person is afraid that the partner will go after them and they'll suffer even more if the partner comes after them. Does that happen as well? Is that one of the problems?
Yeah, and that is often a fear. It's not only the fear, but there's also very often sort of a denial of the situation, because very often after it happens, then there's a making up, and that feels so good, and then there's excuses and there's apologies, and then very often the person will think, well, it'll be okay now, it won't happen again.
They think this time is going to be different.
Yeah.
This time he means his apology, right?
And I do know many people that went through, this particular lady, she went through abuse for almost 30 years.
Yeah.
She has her kids and everything, but she went through all these years being abused, always thinking like that.
Yeah.
He's not that bad, you know, that's how he is.
Yeah.
You know, I love him, I can't, you know, just leave him.
And that indeed, I mean, there is a genuine love for the person that is the abuser. And to be able to see that, yes, I do love the person or the part of the person that is loving me, but what the same person does is unacceptable, is very difficult. And to sort of say, well, this is unacceptable and therefore I will leave or you have to leave, is a very difficult decision to make. Because
often it's like there's a yin-yang personality to the abuser, right? Because sometimes he's really sweet and really caring, then he flips and he becomes a really violent and abusive person.
Yeah.
You get that as well from the people you speak to?
Yeah, that's exactly the problem. And that's when it is good, then you can forget that something bad happened. And when it's bad, you know, you just have to cope with it. There's another point that I would like to make here, and that is that there is also often something about accepting that it is acceptable to be beaten up, you know. And some women have a real deep feeling of there is something wrong with me. Yes, but I was misbehaving. I should not come 5 minutes late. I should have had supper on the table. I shouldn't have said that. I know I upset him. So there can also be an element of deserving come into that relationship.
But the truth is, in my opinion, and I don't know if you share as a professional, if you share my opinion, but in my opinion, it's never okay to be abusive in a relationship. It's never okay to be aggressive, right?
Verbally, physically, I agree with you, James.
No, and I mean psychological abuse without the physical violence can be as harmful as the actual physical violence. If somebody keeps telling you you're ugly, you know, you're fat, you're stupid, then that has a very damaging effect. Yeah. But there's one thing that, and maybe it's good to sort of throw that in now, because I asked one of my clients who was in a domestic violent relationship what she would say to anybody who is in a relationship like that now, or suspects that maybe I am in a relationship like that. And I'd like to quote her, if I may.
Please, because that's what we.
I need my glasses for that.
Hear.
Yeah.
Sure.
And what she has written down for me is that if your daughter was in a relationship the same as yours, would you be happy with that? Would you want her treated the same way? Is she getting what she deserves? Mm-hmm. And I think what she's doing here is going outside yourself, look at the relationship from the outsider perspective. And that is often an eye-opener. That when you think about your best friend being in a relationship like that, your best friend being treated like that, then all of a sudden it becomes unacceptable. That's not fair. And how come you think it's unfair when it happens to somebody else?
Right.
And you don't think it's unfair when it's happening to you? And that is often a realization process that someone needs to go through.
Yeah. And of course, maybe the quicker the person makes a decision to deal with that, the more damage they can prevent from happening, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I just ask you a question? I'm sorry. I wanted to ask you in the beginning. I'm sure you get a lot of people who are victims of abuse, but do you get any abusers like wanting to get counseling to change? Because you also deal with anger management. Do you get?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it anger management, but I do get people that have difficulty in controlling their anger.
Okay.
And what I always say is that feeling anger is okay. You know, it's good to know that you know there's something that is upsetting you.
Everybody gets angry, right?
Yeah, it's normal.
We have emotions. We're human beings, and they're telling us something. Yeah. So to have that feeling is okay. The thing is that what you often hear people say is that I wasn't myself. Well, if you weren't yourself, who were you? Who was in control? Who was in charge? I didn't mean to do that. Yeah? Well, what did you mean to do?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Another question.
Yeah. So it is as if at certain points something takes over that the person doesn't seem to have under control. And I think that's a bit that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde idea, you know, where and that makes it difficult to separate the two, that there is actually a very loving person, but sometimes something happens and
it changes.
And it often goes together with alcohol as well, you know, or drugs, because that is when we lose control over that part of our brain that is actually able to interpret our emotions.
That's it. So, I mean, in this first half, you saw that two important points is that, you know, the quicker you act on that, the more damage you can prevent from happening. And also, look at the relationship from the outside. Would you be happy with your daughter being in that relationship, your friend? And if the answer is no, then you shouldn't accept to be there as well. And sometimes it takes a brave move, a brave person to make that move, but the quicker you do it, the more damage you can prevent. In the second half of this show, we're going to try to delve into the mind of the abuser. And if you are the abuser, you know, you need to seek help, and we're going to speak about this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Now, when we talk about abuse, I personally have very strong views on abuse, and my opinion is that no matter who you are and no matter what the person is doing to upset you, there is no excuse for it. And there's two things that I wanted to take advantage of having Hans here who counsels people on these subjects together with us today, and I want to speak about two specific things. First of all, we were saying during the break that it's very rare to have men to say that they're abused by their female partners. And one of the reasons for that, I personally think, I don't know if I'm right, is that although I imagine that this happens, some men feel embarrassed to own up to this because of their masculinity, their ego. Do you think that's the case?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And so that's why we don't get to see them very often. I mean, I see glimpses of it, and what I see more of is, for example, young men being abused by their mother. I mean, especially during early childhood, where, for example, a mother is unhappy in a relationship and she acts it out on the child. So that a child gets beaten up, not because they've done something wrong, but just because mum's angry.
What signs would you say the person shows, like a man who's been abused or who has been abused in the past? What kind of things do you see? Do you, for example, low self-esteem?
Low self-esteem is very common, because that's what you're told. You're bad, and this is also what I've been doing some work with teachers, which is a subject in itself. But if somebody believes that they are bad, then punishment doesn't help, because it just confirms what they think about themselves. See, I'm bad. So punishment only works for people that think that they are good.
All right, that's interesting.
That's different. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah,
it's actually very true. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And something that I was thinking about in terms of still on the subject of men who are abused is that they are men that have the principle of never hurting a woman or never doing certain things to a woman. And sometimes the woman, if she has an abusive nature, she can take advantage of that, and the guy doesn't know how to react. Is that the case?
Yes, but to go back to, for example, boys being abused by their mother, what often happens is that if that is not being taken care of properly, then they have sort of only one choice left, and that is to change from being the victim to being the persecutor.
Right.
So you see acting out of that anger, which,
I mean, a revenge
if you're this little boy, you can't say to your mum, "Stop beating me." You shouldn't be doing that, mum. Can't do that. But when you grow up, you can say to other people. And so sometimes that what has not been done in the past, because you were only little, is done in the present when you're grown up and when you feel the power and when you feel the control. So
do you feel that's like payback time?
It is more like a trigger that makes someone behave in a way that they would have wanted to behave at the original scene of the crime.
Right.
Yeah. So if you're only little and your mum is beating you up for something that you were allowed to do yesterday, but for some reason you are not allowed to do it today, then you would have wanted to say, "That's unfair." If you then, as a grown-up, and you haven't processed this whole experience, if then as a grown-up you are in a situation where it just isn't fair, then that behavior can sort of pop up,
right,
and take you by surprise. And this is also why people say, "I wasn't myself." Yeah?
Which takes us back now to the abuser. Right? And I asked you something when we were off air, which is my point of view, and I feel very strongly about this, that no matter what anybody does in a relationship, it doesn't give the other person the right to physically abuse or verbally abuse the person, and there has to be an accountability for what the person does. Is that right?
Yeah. And that is what I often admire in people that come to counseling, is that they take responsibility for their own behavior. They say, "What is it that I do that makes me malfunction?" And I believe that we are all responsible for her own behavior. And I mean, we've got lots of emotions, and emotions are just good signals, you know, whether it is hate, whether it is love, whether it is care, whether it is lust. You know, if we didn't have lust as an emotional system, you and I wouldn't be sitting here. Nobody would be here. If we didn't have an emotional system for care, we wouldn't be sitting here as well, because we would die a few days after our birth. So our feelings of anger, that emotional system, has a purpose as well, you know, can be very useful. But the thing is that we can decide what we do with it. If we have lustful feelings and we jump on the woman across the street,
exactly,
you're responsible for that behavior.
Yeah.
If I feel anger and I lash out and I kick someone, that is my responsibility. So it is my choice to act on the emotion that I feel.
Yeah.
And that is what counseling is about. It is about acknowledging, yes, I'm feeling angry. I've got a lot of anger. What is it that I'm so angry about?
Yeah.
I don't want to be in a situation where the other person doesn't seem to be listening to me.
Yeah. Because, I mean, we get angry with each other sometimes, right? And
Of course,
that's normal.
Two different people.
Well, I would rephrase that a little bit.
Okay.
You are communicating, and at some point you start to feel anger. And then when you feel the anger, then what are you going to do? Because there's something that is not right, that you want to be different.
Yeah. I mean,
so you're going to communicate that to Elena.
And that's something we've learned over the years, right? Because in the beginning, I would get angry, she would get angry, and then we would do the silent treatment for a couple of days, right?
You were an expert on that, actually.
That is psychological abuse.
Yeah. I mean, I would do it to her, she would do it to me. But now, I mean, when we get angry, we take a deep breath and we talk about the problem.
At least a few minutes later or half an hour later, when he comes back, you know, we talk about it and we sort it out.
We made this.
But there's a very important thing there, and that to take it back to the domestic violence and the abuse, and that is that to own what you feel. So if you were to say, you make me really angry, then who's in control? Do I want to give the control over me to you by saying, you make me feel really angry? Then you're in control. If I say, I feel angry when you behave like that, then I'm in control. That's my feelings.
Yeah. We made a pact a few years back that even if we were angry with each other, we would solve the problem there and then.
Talk about it.
And we would never go to bed at night angry at each other, right? And that seems to have worked for us. Is that, as a counselor, is that a good system to use? Or, I mean, it has worked for us.
Well, it works for us.
As a counselor, I don't make judgments. So if it works for you...
So what's your opinion?
if it works for you and you feel, and this is another essential element, there seems to be an equality in what you're talking about within your relationship. And in an abusive relationship, there's no equality. There's top dog and there's underdog.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you mean. Like, okay, if that's what he wants, I'll just let him.
and you know, he knows best, or you know, I'm bad, so I should accept it. And I think that's another good thing to keep in mind. If you think about your relationship and you feel that there is an element of inequality, that there's not a balance, then think again.
Right. Okay.
Can I just ask him we are running out of time, I know, but I just have a question, very quick question. What would you tell a family member of, for example, if I know that my friend has been abused, what should I do as a friend to help her? What's your advice? Very quickly, I know we're running out of
I'll try to give a very short answer. How about you ask your family member whether she, I'm assuming it's a she, would be happy for you to be in a relationship like that and to be treated the way that she's being treated. And that is going back to the advice of my...
Okay.
And that will lead her to an action, probably.
It is about creating a distance from the situation that you are in. And that's also what counseling is about. To sort of step back and then look at the situation that you are in. And then you get a different perspective.
Interesting.
Okay. Hans, thank you very much for joining us.
So much.
We've run out of time. And I want to tell you just a couple of things before we finish. If at any time during this program you felt like you've been in an abusive relationship and you need to deal with the trauma, or you are in an abusive relationship, or even if you are the abuser, then visit our website, because we'll have some links there that can help you to deal with this and to overcome these situations. Now, it seems like abuse always has two sides to the coin. The one who is abused and the abuser. And if you are being abused, then you shouldn't have to be in that situation, and it's up to you. It's up to your decision to seek help, to hopefully overcome not only the abuse, but the trauma that abuse brings, and often can last a lifetime. If you are the abuser and you are watching this program now, then it is important that you take responsibility for the actions that you take. There is no excuse for abusing someone, either mentally, emotionally, or physically. And if there would be no responsibility for our actions, then our society would be chaos, right? And our society starts inside our own home. Think about your home as your own country. You would like your country to be peaceful, to be happy. And if it is, then that will spill over to your community, to the people around you. Work to build a safe home, a safe environment. Take responsibility for your actions, and you will see how your relationship will be a lot happier. Okay? Thank you for joining us. We'll be back with you again next week at the same time. Have a wonderful evening.